So it's with great pleasure that we introduce our really good friend, Kourou Pich, who we've known for a long time, since the beginning of Visioning Bear Circle, the Tribal Coalition. And even before that, we were in connection with Kourou through our work with when we were once part of the New England Learning Center for Women in Transition, and we were all part of a 26 agency membership into, or more than that probably, into the Jane Doe Inc. Coalition, the Massachusetts Coalition for the Prevention and Elimination of Sexual and Domestic Violence. So we've known each other for many, many years. And so I want to introduce you, Kourou, and currently you're the CEO of HarborCOV in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and a lot of your work has been pretty incredible in work in the community and your work with circles. So I want to introduce you, and you can say more about yourself as well. Just like to know like how you came involved with Visioning Bear and what our history has been, and also your involvement in the Transforming the Culture of Power gatherings that we've been having, and your feelings towards those. So, Kourou, I turn to you now, for your thoughts about your involvement with us.
Thank you so much, Grandmother Strong Oak. I am honored and humbled to be here and to be in company in relation with you, Grandmother Strong Oak, with Rhiannon, Toya, and Mary. I can't thank enough. It warmed my heart. Grandmother Strong Oak, we've known each other for so long, way back. I think my first retreat conversation about the merging of domestic violence and sexual assault into one coalition. So we're talking about 20 years plus. And I have been following your work, your leadership, for many, many years. And we are so HarborCOV is a mainstream organization within the Chelsea, East Boston, Revere, Winthrop, Charlestown area, and we provide support for survivor of domestic violence in our community, and mostly our immigrants community, people from Central America, Arabic speakers community, Portuguese speaker, Haitian speaker, and then other BIPOC community. Our work is basically really is a grassroots work, we would say. I know I have the title. I just want to take off my title today and be with everyone here and really looking at what we can do differently. Obviously, the thing that we've been doing for so long, it has helped, but at the same time, it's like giving bandages to survivors, and then by the time you finish the last one, the first one comes back. How do we promote stability? How do we support stability? And throughout of our training, we have invited Grandmother Strong Oak and Visioning Bear to provide staff training, circle training. We are, I would say, for the last 10 years, since 2015, we have been implementing the circle practice as a form of governance, community building, healing, you name it. And Visioning Bear has been a supportive partners, especially you, Grandmother Strong Oak. You have been giving us the tools and gifted us the tool how to bring people together, how to do our governance in a way that it is equity, in a ways that people's voice can be heard. I always say this, everyone has a voice, and everyone's voice has been loud and clear, right? Especially community of colors voices. And at the same time, our voices and their voices has been suppressed, right? And are not heard oftentimes. So by utilizing the tool that you have gifted to us, grandmother, we are able to hear every voices from our community, from survivors, from our leaders, everyone that we work with are thankful for that opportunity and then for that setting. I myself oftentimes found myself that it's so hard not to be in circle when I'm not in the circle. And then really connect ourselves, because everything has a ripple effect. What we always say, that what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves, right? The Mother Earth, we're doing to ourselves. And how do we stop all form of violence, right? The violence that we're doing to our air, water, a fire, and earth also impacted humanity. And then how do we stop the violence that we have experiencing around the world, not just in America, but around the world? So that's how we come in contact with the Visioning Bear and your leadership, Grandmother Strong Oak, and you have supported us tirelessly. Coming to our community to give the support, not just HarborCOV. I'm also part of the Human Rights Commission in Revere, and grandmother have also brought that gift, the tool, the circle practice to a Human Rights Commission. And it was the first time ever in history, I would believe, that we have a circle in the council chamber, right? And then we had community came and joined our circle. I would say the first time ever in the history of the politic in the city of Revere to have the indigenous circle practice in the council chamber. So I am proud of our community, and I'm proud of our work, and proud of the guidance that we have been received from the Visioning Bear, and then also from you particularly, Grandmother Stronghold.
We want to lift up some of the ways in which you've incorporated circle practice in your organization. When you became aware of these circle practices, and you had also an employee that also was very much an indigenous woman that was very much involved in bringing circle practices, and we were working in partnership there for quite a while. And I remember the staff meetings, bringing circle practice to staff. And there in the staff meeting, especially when you're working in domestic violence and you have so many working parts, that one person's work impacts another person's work. And a lot of times if one piece of work isn't happening, then the other things start falling apart too. And in the circle, people were free to discuss those aspects of the job and how it was working. And I remember whenever somebody wasn't quite doing the job as efficiently, and it was impacting other people's work, how it was from a caring place that people addressed it. Is there any way we can support you? And that cut into the whole hierarchical thing where it puts a lot of burden on the CEO as the last, where the buck stops. and to not be seen as, you know, the one that comes down on someone and then everybody doesn't understand what's going on. Everything would be transparent and everyone would know how everything was working and everyone felt safe to talk about that. And then the whole group was involved. So I thought this was a way to have a non-hierarchical interaction within a hierarchy, you know, that you're in, you know, and even Visioning there, we have a hierarchy of sorts because we can't get rid of the fact that we have to have a staff and a board. We just made things transparent, but I wanted to highlight what, not only what you did in staff, that began to be translated into the work you did in shelter with the people who were in shelter, building their leadership with circles, allowing for their pain to come through, and then bringing circles into the very community in which you live. And I just wanted to say how inspiring that has been about what's possible in integrating circles into every avenue of your life as a way of life, you know, and the culture of the organization is impacted by that. And so you're just, I know how beloved you are where you work. And so I wondered too, if you could talk about how using circle practices impacted your work in the Human Rights Commission.
Yes, grandmother. I can talk about circle all day long. So in 2015, we started our first circle. So we have a former staff member, Dr. Pinto, Saida Pinto, who started at HarborCOV. She she's an indigenous from Central America. She's been practicing utilizing circle as a tool and like all her life in her work. We were fortunate she brought that. At the time, we weren't practicing circle. And she started it with survivors. And I remember she started with the survivor. We had two groups. One is Spanish speakers group circle and then one English speaker circle. And as it progressing, the group said, wait a minute, why do we have two groups? Why don't we just have everybody in one group, regardless you speak English and Spanish, and get an interpreter so that we can be a one united front? And that was so beautiful. And the decision were made not by a staff, by HarborCOV staff or me. Decision were made by survivor. This is what we want, and then we want to make sure that we provided that access. So we got translations, equipment, an interpreter for that circle. And then unfortunately, we were experiencing a tragedy. One of our emergency shelter client were shot by a stray bullet during the violent incident on the street. And that was so devastating for not only the family, the staff, the community that are surrounding us and in us. So we shut down for like a month, and we were utilizing Circle for the family, for the community member, for staff to really looking at what happened and how do we make sense with all of this, right? And from that time on, HarborCOV decided that we need this circle because how we brought the community together, we brought them together through our circle practice, through that process, and everyone were really involved with the process. We saw the engagement. It was so deep. People spoke from the heart space and listening from the heart space, right? And that was so beautiful. So in 2016, so we started implementing the circle practice at HarborCOV. And everything we do it in circle. We have been utilizing the circle for um, restoring conflicts, healing, addressing harm, in supervision, and also in we usually call staff meeting, but we don't call that anymore. We have staff circle, and everybody's taking turn to host that circle. So the agenda, it's not coming from me. The agenda is coming from a collective staff. And the same for survivors. I remember grandmother one time because survivor always involved in policy, legislative advocacy. Um, so I usually come in and talk about it. And so we had a circle. I came in and lay out, just like we usually do in a classroom setting, um, but in a circle space. And then one of the survivors like, Kourou, that's boring. It's like, "Th- that's boring." Um, I say, okay, so you guys take over, right? What will make sense? And they say, okay, this is how we want to do it. And this is how we want to create this legislative advocacy structures and policy structure and how we engage the community and elected official. And that was just perfect. And like you said, grandmother, so the pressure is not always on me, right?
Mhm.
Everybody feel a sense of belonging. They feel that they can contribute. Everyone can contribute something, and everyone can take that leadership. So I believe that everyone is a leader in a
Yeah.
circle practice,
You were
right?
talking about like the grief that you had to do, go through then. And I'm thinking about last year when you were at the Transforming the Culture of Power and you came with several members of your staff to attend the event. And I'm remembering, you were signed up to have the wiping of the tears ceremony. But during the day, there had been a homicide in your community, and you had to travel all the way back from Deerfield to Boston, which is about 125 miles one way. And you went back there to do healing in your community, meeting in your community, probably a circle with the people in your community. And then you came back in time to participate in the wiping of the tears. And here you did this 250-mile journey to to do those things. And I'm wondering about, the impact that ceremony had and your involvement in some of our trainings now. You took the whole walking and balance training recently. And, what's important to you about the connection with the Transforming the Culture of Power conference itself and the training, and then incorporating this training back into your community. If you could speak on those things, that would be
Yes. So
incredible.
we oftentimes, when we're talking about leadership, one person holding all the power in decision making, right? So utilizing the circle, especially I was I'm still in awe, and I have been sharing about the walking in balance training and also transformative power conference that I have been participating for the last 2 years and sharing that with staff, and staff at HarborCOV, new staff, people who's been there, they love circle process. Everything we do, it's a circle. And to have that, to create that healing space first and foremost, I believe that everyone, including staff, community, and survivor, we need healing. We have been experiencing violence one way or another, regardless, right? There's childhood violence, there's childhood trauma, adult violence, and all kinds of violence, not only directed toward us, but also we have seen, we have witnessed. So to have that walking in balance space for everyone, it's so healing. It's so empowered and inspired. I feel whole after that training. I walk differently in the community. Um, and then sharing that love, that caring, and it's not just um egoistic, like power that will hold, but genuine loves and caring that I also have for the community. And I also seen people who's been practicing circle sharing the same mission, basically. And the staff at HarborCOV is so looking forward to the training. So a few of us will be going, at least five will be going. And yes, I'm really excited. And then also, I want to share this as well, grandmother. So we also have been looking at um, a way to do our work differently. And as we know that many of the survivors whom we serve identify as weak female and it's been harmed by male identified partner, I would say 95%. And then the staff and the community have conversation about, okay, who should be involved to be part of this community solution to end domestic violence and gender-based violence, right? So together we said we can be experts in responding to help and support people who's been harmed, a survivor who's been harmed, but we haven't really looked at the root causes of the harm. And when we look at our data, we realize we need to involve men. So that before COVID, we got together and put together a men in leadership circle. So we're inviting men who are leader in the community in decision making power, right? Such as police chief, fire chief, city mayors, um, city managers, captains, superintendent, school superintendents, principals, everybody. I remember invited 32 people and 38 people came to the first circle. Yes, to the first circle, including fire chief. It was overwhelmingly great work that the committee put together, and every man in that circle shared deeply, and they crave for this space, right? To really address, and we're not looking for like good men, bad men. We're just looking at the socialization of manhood and how a small group of men who's doing harm got supported by a larger community of manhood, basically. And we're not looking to point our finger to Joe next door or someone next door, but how do I wake up every day and contribute to this harm, right? Unconsciously. So people had a very, very deep conversation about it. And some disclose what they have done to cause harm to their loved ones, to their daughter, to their partner. And that the space that change can begin. Unfortunately, we were going to have a conference with 500 men and boys in our community, and COVID hit. So now we regroup that men in the leadership circle again. So last Friday, we had this gender-based conference. We have a handful of men. We have Black men, Latino men, white men, Asian men sitting in a group and in a circle with talking piece, with centerpiece, and really shared deep, deep personal experience and messages that they receive, and acknowledging that gender-based violence not only cause harm to um, women, but it also cause harm to men and boys as well. And they are really committed to continue doing the work. So we're going to regroup the Men in Leadership Circle again. It's really exciting. And yes, and then the circle we also implement at the Human Rights Commission. Everybody had the training. We invited Grandmother Strong Oak and from Visioning Bear to provide us a 2.5 days, right? Grandmother, or 2 days training with all the commissioners. And so we have been practicing the circle. We are looking forward to having learning, listening circle within the community in different wards. And we are hoping to get together with all of the counselors, city counselors, and then how can we partner with them to host the circle um, in their area. And then, getting all the information that we can have to share with the community, to share with elected officials and community as a whole. So we're really excited, and then hopefully within the next couple of months, we can put that plan together.
And we want to cite the work that you've been doing with the Human Rights Commission and bringing circles there, and then bringing us, Vision Bear, myself in particular, to go and do those kinds of trainings. And I remember how really difficult it was at the beginning. And I know that sometimes it was so challenging that it was hard to think about continuing because you'd go home with all this pain from things that you witnessed and harm that happened right in the circle to people that you come to love and work with. So I'm thinking about the one Muslim chair of the Human Rights Commission that went through a difficult time with the white mayor, and how you did work with that man, citing the work of, doing work with people who harm. And the way to get through to that man was to acknowledge the good things he had done. And and he was open then to being seen as a whole person, which seemed to be the key there. And then somehow or other he reversed his position of suspending that person and then embracing her back into her position as chair. And things have gone even further than that. So I think maybe, you could talk about that. It's fascinating and inspiring to watch how you incorporate the principles of circles to to cause change to happen in these big ways in a community of color that's pretty much being really run by white people, actually, and not having a voice, and you bringing that and supporting the voices of people of color in your community. So, and these are the heart of the work, is to address those who are doing the harm, to transform how they behave. So if you could share that story, that would be great.
Yeah, it was very transformative. I have to say, and I also, in the spirit of the circle, I want to also honor our commissioners who went through the circle process, who's been practicing, who's connected with you, Grandmother Strong Oak, said this is not right, right? When we know that harm has been caused to a member, and how do we address that and then also repair and restore, right? because we know that the person who has caused harm also gone through um, a hard time or has been harmed themselves, right? And we know that hurt people, heal people, heal people. So the rest of the commissioner requested a meeting with the mayor and the director um, to address this, the harm that has been caused. And I have to say, giving a lot of credit to the mayor for being so open-minded and listening to all the commissioners. We had the first meeting, it was not in a circle process. It was more like a lecturing meeting. The second meeting, we did it in a circle. Everybody had a talking piece. And that has changed the whole concept of the meeting. It has changed completely. Everybody was able to hold that talking piece and spoke about their experiences. And it was a successful circle. The young Black Muslim woman, now she's also just got reappointed a couple of weeks ago. And she's continued to lead the Human Rights Commission. She's is voted again to be the chair, and she did it gracefully, intelligently at our last meeting. So yeah, the harm has repaired, and we were able to bring people back together.
Yeah, it was so important for you to share that, Kourou, because that shows a systemic redress of, harm and transformation of harm that is going to go forward now in that community. And
Yeah, and the mayor is so fond of that. The mayor also want to continue the circle, and he committed to be involved with the circle.
so this is like a hallmark of the kind of work that we do, those of us who now, bring Circle forward, like to transform the culture of power. There's a really great example of transforming the culture of power in that community. Because now the community sees that the mayor, who is white, is on board with the leadership of this young woman of color, a Muslim woman of color during these times, and how important that is for the immigrant community you serve. Because in Chelsea, I think like the high school is what, 70% students of color?
Yes, yes.
And yet there's a lot of racism in the community and lack of acceptance on the part of the Italian, especially community there, and the white community there, and all the work, that's been happening even around, like people being apprised of what the indigenous culture is there, the history, the whole thing with Columbus Day is a big thing that comes up in your community. So I just want to honor your work and honor your time as well. I know we just have a few minutes left, and I'm wondering if there's something, last thoughts you would like to share. And we are looking forward to seeing you in May.
Yes, I am also looking forward. Just for clarification, the Human Rights Commission is in the city of Revere, not
Yeah.
Chelsea,
Oh,
grandmother.
yeah.
Yes.
But the demographics all fit, right?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry
Yes.
about that.
No,
I,
no,
I
don't be
plead over.
sorry. I just want to clarify that. And then also, I just want um, to appreciate you for doing this podcast and appreciate the invitation, grandmother. You're so kind, generous, and supportive of our works and find ways to help us do things differently, to help us do things indigenous way. And it's the only way, I believe, that can really promote equity and justice for all of us. So I'm honored to be part of this movement, I would say, and continue to carry the work, the legacy of the indigenous way of living and doing things in the world to decolonize what has been colonized. So I'm so looking forward to the conference and to continuing this work and seeking guidance and leadership from you and from the rest of us here on the podcast. Thank you so much. I unfortunately have to go. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're so honored that you came for our very first podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye. So, want to welcome everyone to the very first podcast of the Visioning Bear Circle Intertribal Coalition. And we are going to be a team from Visioning Bear who has a regular podcast that we hope that you will enjoy. This is going to be about transforming the culture of power that we live in to a place of equity and justice. And so the team at Visioning Bear will include myself, Strong Oak. I'm the founder and executive director of the organization. And also Mary Whelan, who's with us today as a guest. And maybe you can, there's Mary. And so Mary has been with us obviously from the beginning. And she'll have some things to share about some of the history. We're going to go over some of the history of Visioning Bear, how we came to be and where we're at right now at this time in history. And then also there's Rhiannon Zorn, who is on our board of directors, who started out, taking our training. And then Atoya Scott, who's also on our board of directors, or actually what we call now the Circle of Leadership. We changed our name to be less hierarchical, trying to neutralize the hierarchy within our organization, which brings me, to the history actually. And Bob is not here with us today, but Bob Cooley will be here as a white male, and he has a lot of important things that he shares on our board of directors as a man, and has a big impact in the trainings that we do, where he brings that perspective to other people who also are also, men. And as it's important to recognize that men are an important part of this process. And so what I wanted to talk about is how we came to be. Initially, we were we were working at Nelquit, and we were working initially at the Survivor Project, which was a survivor-led program, very progressive. And in its being so progressive, it actually had a hard time being accepted within the community of Nelquit itself. The New England, Nelquit's the acronym for the New England Learning Center for Women in Transition, which is a dual program serving both sexual and domestic violence survivors. And they operated a shelter at the time. We got involved there in 1999 as the first co-director of the Survivor Project. And we were very progressive, so we were invited to do a lot of workshops, both regionally, statewide, and nationally as well. And then after a bit, I left there and went work at another rape crisis center in central Massachusetts, and then came back to the organization in a different capacity. Well, it was sad that they actually closed that program. It was a time of economic hardship among all of the organizations, and there were choices that people made. And not a surprise that the mainstream organization let go of its most progressive aspects. And they survived through other organizations that took them on. In the meanwhile, when we were working at Nelquit, first we came back as a consultant, then we came back as a staff person once again. And there was rape prevention education money, which is now totally dried up under this administration in closing down a lot of the programming done by CDC, because that's where sexual assault funding comes from, CDC, whereas domestic funding comes through OVW, the Office of Victim, Women. So, so it's like, and philosophically, those two branches came from a very different perspective in terms of dealing with harm. All along, the CDC is under public health, so we had a public health model. And on the rape prevention education money came, there was an opportunity to study and look at the strengths of a particular community and lift it up for particular services. At first, when we applied for that position and we got it, we got special training in a model that talked about how systemic problems often are the root cause in a deep way of all of the other problems that are going on. So it starts with the individual, it moves up the line. And the idea was, if you're going to do prevention, you don't want to just keep taking the fish out of the water. You want to find out what's the problem up ahead. So like you want to go to prevent right at the root rather than just do interventions that are like a Band-Aid. So we had to get special training in how to look at things from that perspective. So I got the agency to allow me to shift my focus from youth, which is what they applied for, and change it to working with the indigenous community, because nobody from the indigenous community was coming to the agency for any kind of services. And being a part of the community in Western Mass and an intertribal community, we would always vend there, and we would always bring our stuff from Visioning Bear there. We would talk to people about, how was sexual violence, how did they see it being dealt with? And they did not like the idea of going to a mainstream agency for the reasons that you would think, that people would lose their children, that people would get longer sentencing, and there was a lack of cultural understanding about how people approach the world. So when we first got this funding, the first thing we did was invite people to interviews individually. Also, we got permission to go into the Charlemont community, where there was a thriving gathering that happened there practically every 2 weeks and went all through the winter. And it was like intertribal people from all over came. And like I had to get permission with tobacco to the chief and the person that was the main person that was the head of that particular area. And I got that, and then I went to the social fires and started talking to people. But I noticed at first, the elders didn't even come to listen to that by the social fire. But eventually, we began to meet with people, and they started to come to the organization. And what we did was we took over the building on a Saturday so that we had the place to ourselves, and we were able to culturally appropriately begin to do the work. Like what we did was we would come in the morning, we would do our work, and we had built-in childcare because the children could come. We did everything in circle, and so the children would come in and out of the circle. Like we didn't keep the children from coming in, and they catch on really fast to how circle works, because they knew when it came to them they could speak and no one could interrupt. And then we had all the toys and all the things in the adjoining room. Then at lunchtime, we would have a big feast, and then we would drum in the afternoon. And then, and sometimes we did other kinds of traditional arts. It became so popular. And then we ended up having it twice a month, all day. I mean, that's amazing. For people who work in a mainstream agency to get a bunch of volunteer people to come in for 2 whole days a month. People were totally in it. It's like, and we began looking at these goals. We had to set goals for the prevention work. And so instead of just me, a staff person, sitting down and writing these goals and sending them in and then imposing them upon other people, I said, here's what we got to do, and here's the money we have to do it with. And we went around and together formed the goals. We determined what our, and then we submitted them. And then if they wanted us to edit anything, I brought that back, and then we all edited it together. So we all knew what was in this grant money and how it was going to go about. And at first we really tried to learn bystander training from Quabbin Mediation, which is, a mainstream organization doing mediation work in the Franklin County area. And we all diligently did it. We even went to national trainings where we brought, we got national attention right away. We were born in 2006. By 2008, we were doing national trainings every year. And we were becoming a big force nationally for the work we were doing. And we were already talking about bringing restorative practices in. And we recall that there was a young girl, 12 years old. She got raped right there, in the community. And we supported her through that, whether she wished to report. She chose to report, and eventually the person that she chose ended up going into prison his prison sentence was so he could completely do the training for the sex offender training that they had. And so he received all that training. We don't know how he's doing today, but we do know that the community was divided about this. And this young woman was screaming right on the grounds, and no one interceded to keep her from being sexually assaulted. So we supported the mother. We went to the community with a talking piece, with some tobacco, and she was able to confront the community, but why they had not protected her daughter. And then we had to deal with the media and the newspaper, because by how they presented this information in the newspaper, it clearly would have identified who she was in the community. So that was a real big hardship there. And another incident happened where there was, we were a member of the Elder Council, and we were having a council meeting because a person who was a member of our community who was about to be bumped up to second-degree sex offender. And I hate using those nouns. I'm using the language of the system at this moment. He was going to be bumped up to second level of dangerousness. And he wanted us to consider writing a letter to keep that from happening. So all of the elders, we all met. And while we were meeting, the young people, children of the elders, were in the basement of the home where we were meeting, and one of the adolescent sons of one of the elders sexually assaulted another elder's daughter. And so we then had a whole thing around that. In fact, the father of the son, even though he had been doing a lot of work with us around management of people who do sexual harm and how to deal with them in the community, bringing restorative practices, when it came to his own son, he was not able to do that. So when we did presentations nationally, you gotta imagine this happening like in 2008. Long before anyone was doing that work. And we went to, what we did was make every role, we made a role for every person. So the people who took the workshop would come in, they would be given a card. This is who you're going to be in the circle. So they were the father, they were the daughter, the mother, all the tribal community members. They had particular roles. and they were to introduce themselves as those people. And then there were young girls who also came forward and said they had been sexually assaulted by the same person. And so they had roles in the circle too. And it looked like we were having a big therapy session. That's what people said it looked like. If they peeked in the door and the circle was going on, it was quite intense. What was impressive about that is 2 different times we did that at 2 different national conferences. And the solution in the community involved, first, the person had to be seen as a good person. They had to be acknowledged for the good things they did. And just like what, is often needed. Person needs to be seen as a whole person, and then they can be accountable. Then their pain can come out. And in both cases, this happened in both of these circles. But again, the field wasn't quite yet ready for that kind of work. But nonetheless, we kept, persisting with that envisioning bear. And eventually, people in the organization had a hard time. There was a core group of people who were fundamentalists in their religious beliefs, and they could not integrate that the residential boarding schools had such a big impact, and the Christian empire had such a big impact on the harm that indigenous people experienced here, and was used as a reason to take away all our land and to practically genocide us out. So over time, we kept getting resistance from within the staff of, especially people who were really connected with that whole religious piece. And at one point, we were told that we were an enemy of the Catholic Church in a Women of Color meeting. So it was a really sad thing. And eventually, our organization said we need to leave and we need to form our own organization. So we did that. And the ED at the time, she has since crossed, and we don't want to name her here, but we want to say we owe her a lot of gratitude because she helped us with our bylaws. She helped us, begin to. She sent us off to the first LEAP Academy that happened at in California at what's now called Valorous. We were part of the first peer cohort. And there we learned how to be an executive director with all of the tools, the board recruitment, profit and loss, dealing with finances. And then our goal was to found a new organization. And we did found it. And with everyone involved, it was founded as a group of people. And then we got our 501c3. It was a 9-month process. It took us 9 months to go through all of the thinking of all of us and our fears about creating a hierarchy and how to form our bylaws to be as non-hierarchical as possible. Because we at that time were quite happy with being a circle and Nelquit holding the hierarchy. But it's like then, now here we were going to have to create something that was going to have some aspects of hierarchy. But we did it. It took us 9 months. And it has not required a whole lot of amending since we first did it. And then once we got going, we then applied for our first grant. We applied for first, it was October 29th, when in 2014, when we submitted our 501c3 application. At that time, it took a long time to get it. The earliest you could get it is 3 months, and we did get ours on February 10th, 2015. We applied for our first grant from the Just Beginnings Collaborative. By then, we already had a national reputation when we formed our organization. So we were one of 10 organizations from across the country that got chosen for a $250,000 grant over 3 years. And then it ballooned to $335,000 over 4 years. And we were on the map. So, and then once we were on the map, we began to look at some things that weren't working. And I'm going to, turn this over to Mary Whelan to talk about how we began to look at how we were doing our prevention work and the process of developing a curriculum. And I'm going to pass it to you, Mary, so that you can share
Okay.
that piece.
And maybe I'm going to turn this so that the sun isn't in everybody's. Less sun. I think there's less sun now. But anyway, yeah, I think at one point we were doing reading of different books to really kind of, I think that's kind of how it started, that we ended up working on a curriculum. Was what we were reading. There were two books on the what's called the original instructions, and that are basically things that have been taught, for generations in Native culture. And so we had, based on the kind of growing out of that, was the idea of developing a curriculum. And we also had all read Robin, what's her last name?
Walton,
Yeah, Robin Wall Kimmerer, and read books that she had written, and so we we developed this curriculum. There were 8 of us who worked on it, and I had done some research that we also used, looking into values of different Native American tribes, and um, and coming up with a list of ones that were very common in a lot of tribes, and so we ended up with basically 12 values, and so each one was the basis of a session of the training. And then there was the first session of the training was basically people learning about circle process before we got into the other areas. And so anyway, that's kind of, we developed it as a group. There were 8 people who were involved in authoring the training. And I did, some of the trainings early on, and we even went to other states. I remember I went to Wyoming and did one of the trainers there, and on the Pine
when
Wind River, the Wind River Reservation. I got the wrong name. And so, yeah, that was quite a while ago. The things have really developed, and things could get changed too as we did trainings. If something really needed to be, we wanted to emphasize something, or we wanted to change something, or how we approached it, if to make it better. We actually kept editing it for a while, and could still do that now if we felt like something really works well or something doesn't work well, or and it's been quite a process. So it's like this living document, but it's not something that just is there and it's stays the same forever. It's kind of, and people, the trainers can bring in their own personal experiences too, and the trainers even really seem like they're just part of the circle. It's not like, it's like sometimes people don't even realize that that people are trainers. They just kind of think, oh, they're telling their own story, because people can bring their own story as examples of different things. And so it's not like every time we do this training that it's the same. It can change, and with different people. So now we're going to Rhiannon. We're gonna it's and so she can talk more. She's been doing a lot of trainings, and she can talk more about that and whatever. So I pass to you.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I feel like I could talk about the walking and balance training all day, every day, and never tire or run out of things to say about it. Um, I came to know Visioning Bear and their work in 2020, which was like personally a time for me when there was a lot that was kind of upside down. Um, I was kind of in my own spiritual boot camp, I think, just getting uh, beat up a little bit in terms of lived experiences and lots of kind of hard earned lessons in terms of listening to spirit and letting that be the guiding force in my life. And it was through a lot of that that I found myself at like one of the hardest points for me, knocking on the door, and there was a training starting. And so I felt so blessed to be welcomed in, to get to know Elder Strong Oak, and to be invited to participate as a student in the curriculum. Um, and I cannot possibly overstate the ways that going through that training the first time changed everything about how I interact with the world, how I approach my own life and my role in all of the places that I get to exist. Um, it really, it was the first opportunity I'd really had to participate and practice in a process of truly listening, like deeply listening, rather than, um, preparing what it was one was going to say next. It was the first opportunity I had to really be heard in that way. And it was also my first experience with really speaking from the heart, not having something that I'd thought through about what I was going to say and why, but really being moved in the moment to speak and feeling safe and comfortable to do so. Um, and so that was a pretty radical difference for me than other spaces that I had existed in. And it also, the curriculum, the teachings themselves, it so vastly expanded my sense of community and my understanding of, to whom I belong. And it so revolutionized my sense of responsibility, like literally my capacity to respond to situations and circumstances and things that I saw as problematic. It really showed me how so much of what I had held to be isolated, individuated problems, in my own experiences and in my community were so tied together and so related. And I so appreciate, as you were saying before, Elder Strong Oak, the way that this curriculum, it doesn't put a band-aid on anything. It doesn't offer a superficial view or papering over of any of the problems that we face. It speaks with love and compassion directly to the root of the issue. And I found that to be so healing in such a unique way, and so inspiring. Um, and it really, immediately coming out of that training, I walked away with such a profound gratitude, and such a profound sense that this is needed everywhere. Like these are conversations that I want everyone to get to participate in. Um, like I had just had my second child, and all I could think about coming out of the training was like, what kind of world would he get to grow up in if more people had access to this training? And so I dove right in, and I was honored and delighted to get to be invited back, to teach the curriculum. And I have been gleefully, joyously doing that ever since. Um, and I've really, it kind of blows my mind all over again every time I get to participate. Um, there's so much to learn even as a teacher of the curriculum. And I'm always so amazed the more people that come through and the different diversities of groups that we assemble, the ways that these values that you were speaking about, Mary, are are so universal. You know, we've had groups now with folks who have indigenous roots all over the globe, and it's really beautiful to hear the specific stories and teachings that they carry, that all speak, you know, in very, very different and beautifully diverse ways about these very like simple and held in common values. Um, and so that's really been, it's been so wonderful for me to get to participate. It's been so educational. It's been so healing, and it's really given me over and over again, which I think, you know, at least I'll speak for myself, it's been needed here. the you know, learn the thing and then learn it once more and from another viewpoint and from this angle. So many opportunities to look at these values that, you know, so many of them are words that we hear in dominant culture that we think of as like, oh yes, I believe in that. And then when we really sit and we look at it, um, the actions that we're taking personally and the actions that we're taking as part of these systems are so antagonistic to these values that we think that we want to uphold and think that we are upholding. And so it's been such a humbling process and such a an empowering process at the same time, getting to see like, oh, if respect or generosity, if these things are really important to me, then I cannot in good faith participate in these things that are being presented to me. And it's really, I'm very grateful that I came to Visioning Bear at a time when the Transforming the Culture of Power conference was happening, because it has led me to this commitment to want to transform the culture of power. And so I've been so grateful, um, to get to feel like I am playing a role in something that feels so necessary, and so effective and so needed, um, particularly in these times. Uh, yeah, and I think that's it for me, and I'll pass things along now to Atoya, who can share some more.
Received, Rhiannon. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here today. And it's just always a privilege to hold space with all of you. Um, what a beautiful thing um, that Visioning Bear is, and how lucky we all are that Elder Strong Oak decided to diverge from dominant culture, and to found this organization along with others and make something that has so greatly contributed to society. Um, and I feel like even in our very first podcast, the power of the organization is so visible in having a conversation with someone like Kourou Pich, who is a survivor of the Cambodian genocide, right? And to hear the scope of her work and what she is doing and all that she's doing in the community, and especially like how closely she has been working with you, Elder Strong Oak, and working with Visioning Bear. It just speaks to the power of, I believe Visioning Bear is a movement. That's how I see the organization, as a movement. Um, and it's just a privilege to be in this space. I came to my first Visioning Bear training, Walking in Balance training, in 2021. I was working with the Hidden Water Restorative Justice Organization that deals with child sexual abuse. And I've been doing some amazing work with them. And then I saw that we were invited to do a training with Elder Strong Oak, and other circle keepers at Visioning Bear. And at the time, I honestly did not know who Visioning Bear was. I had never heard of it. I was new to the restorative justice sphere. Like I was in the fashion industry, and I just didn't have much contact with people in the restorative justice field. And so I was with a fellow circle keeper who said, we have to do this. It's visioning bear. We have to do it. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I did it. And it changed my life. It was the beginning of something that I didn't know I needed, but that I did need. And I realized I needed it as I took the training. And even with, and again, like the people who are involved in this organization speak to the power of the organization itself, with you, Elder Strong Oak, and you, Mary, who have had a lifetime of activism, a lifetime of fighting for justice, a lifetime of spreading the message of the original teachings, and just doing the work, right? And that's what I stepped into. That is what I stepped into. And again, it changed my life. And keeping with, I became a circle keeper after taking the training. I was invited to become a circle keeper, and that as well has changed me. And it's interesting because even as a circle keeper, I learn so much every time I sit in circle and we are teaching a curriculum. Like I end up learning so much from the people who are taking the training that I'm in circle with. And it just shows that I know you said, Mary, that it took you all about 9 months to complete it, complete the curriculum. And as I listened to that, I was amazed in that it's such a well-rounded curriculum. And it's so powerful and founded in such ancient knowledge that you would think that it would take years to develop something like that. And it didn't. And for me, it's just another reflection of the power of that, and just like the fact that it's spirit-led work. It's doing the work of the spirit in restoration, right? And again, it is a living document. I think in every circle that I've done, we do the training as they are, but everything shifts in the circle depending on who's in it. So it really is a living document. And it shifts and it accommodates every and anyone who is in the space, who is doing the work, who is taking the training or even teaching. The curriculum just kind of, it flows, and it's interwoven always. And another thing that I really appreciate about the walking and balance training is that it fits into all facets of life. Like when I think about how can I apply what I'm learning here? How can I apply this to daily life? I can apply it literally to every single thing that I ever do during any given day with any person that I am encountering at any time, right? So I can apply the concept of circle and its teachings in my home. It can be used with children. I think it should be used early on with children. It can be used in schools. It can be used in workplaces. We just spoke with Kourou and heard her speak about how it is being used in the workplace, at her organization and other organizations. It can even be used in random situations with people that we don't know, helping us to maintain that balance. How am I relating to people around me? How am I relating to the world around me? A good thing about Visioning Bear is that it doesn't just teach people about how to interact with human beings, it integrates all of the natural world into that way of thinking and living. And so Circle, I've oftentimes applied circle to how I'm interacting with the environment around me. How am I interacting with the plants and animals, right? And that's so important for human beings to know how to do. And I think lastly, for me, like when I reflect on Visioning Bear, when I reflect on the training, when I reflect on the conference that is coming up, I feel that everything that I experience in this space puts into words the things that I think and feel oftentimes, But dominant culture does not provide any space for us to acknowledge and to process. And I feel like that is when the teachings of Visioning Bear steps in, the concepts and the principles step in, and they give people that space to be able to acknowledge things that come up for us, because as human beings, we have that in us. We know that we should be kind. We know that we should have compassion. We know that we should not do things to harm each other. We know that forgiveness is good for us. But do we have the space to process that in dominant culture? Oftentimes we do not. And so it's not thought about enough. It is not, there's no way to acknowledge and process it. And so we see all of this harm being done. Yeah, I'm just really appreciative and just really grateful to be here with you all. And with that, I'll pass back to you, Elder Strongo.
Another aspect of the development of our curriculum involves, how we came to be able to evaluate it and measure the impact. And it's hard to do that in prevention. So we were lucky. We had Morgan J. Curtis, who this is like something she does internationally. She is educated out of Harvard, and she's particularly amazing researcher. And we were trying to figure out how we could bring this forward and show what a big impact the curriculum has on changing people's lives. And also we were fortunate to have Patrick Lemon, who is from Oregon, and he also has been involved in so many state and national systems for evaluating prevention curriculums. So we came up with using Michael Quinn Patton's model that people's behavior reflects the real values they have inside. It's like the old saying, look at what people do, not what they say. So we looked at our curriculum, and we designed a model, 4 major questions we measure. One is to uphold the perspective that harm can be healed and prevented, that it's not inevitable or irreparable. I mean, that sentence alone says a lot. And then to frame that out, the curriculum modules bring forward that, the curriculum itself frames harm and violence in ways that account for their systemic aspects. And they issue as a broad invitations for participation in the program and engage the community in relationships and program development in ways that are intended to prevent violence. And you could see some of that being discussed today. And the second thing was support others to identify their truths and have a voice in the decisions that affect their lives. And when you provide a safe container, like the circle itself is the sacred container, that spirits can, we believe that spirit is in charge of, and our ancestors come through these circles. And so it becomes a way for people to feel safe to talk about things that they intimately believe, that they hold and cherish. We spend a lot of time building that trust. In the first 3 hours in building the agreement, we asked people how they got their name. We have them draw where they're from, and who are their people. And that brings in a lot more deep aspects. And then when we go to form our agreements for working with each other, it's very comprehensive. It goes way beyond what people spend 10 minutes doing oftentimes at the beginning of a meeting, when you spend 3 hours doing that. So we begin that support for building the ability to be able to share in that kind of way. And then we facilitate the connection between people and among people, Mother Earth and all other beings. So we begin to expand the whole area of what we consider to be consent. And we begin to expand what harm looks like. And then we measure success in our evaluation by seeing how people interrupt harm. with a healing intent for everyone involved, and how people are willing to work through the conflicts with courage and honesty, and to listen to others without interrupting or judging them, and to create spaces and opportunities to decrease isolation of people from each other and other beings. So that's the third aspect that we measure. And the other one is, lastly, the fourth, is to treat Mother Earth, plants, and animals like they have the same rights as human beings, and to engage in relationships based on reciprocity with all beings, and to do that with empathy and compassion. So those are the four things we measure. And at the beginning of every one of the curriculum modules, we ask, reflecting on what happened in your life since we last met in circle, what are you bringing today? And oftentimes all the change that people are making, the impact of the curriculum comes through there. And then we ask freshly for people to look at a particular issue, like the modules we measure are, after we, peace and justice, to look at the systemic causation and the root issues that we're all dealing with. Then we go to respect, and we expand that to include respect for all beings, including Mother Earth, plants, and animals. Then we talk about living our life with balance, being able to self-care and also care for others in a balanced way. Then we talk about courage and what that looks like, and how to safely involve in courageous acts, to address harm. Then we talk about humility from the place of understanding that we are not the top of the food chain. We are one of an interdependent series of species and plants and animals that none of which can be omitted. If the bee were to disappear, then we very well could disappear, because our food supply would not be the same. It would be not pollinated. So we talk about humility from that place, and then we talk about having compassion and what that looks like, and what that would mean to behave in a compassionate way, and then leading to empathy, which again allows for one to put oneself in someone's shoes. Like, empathy is possible when we so have had the same experience that we can actually feel that inside. And then when we look at wisdom, we look at how we all came here with gifts, how some of us have not been able to access our gifts because of systemic oppression, but nonetheless, we all have a gift, and we have a responsibility to share that gift and not hoard it. It's important that we share everything, and if that gift resulted in monetary gain, that we have a responsibility to share that wealth with others, and to fashion a world where it's based that way. And then we move on to looking at our connection to the land, and how this world we live in often keeps us from having dynamic relations with the plants and animals, because the systemic culture we live is in, treat them like objects, and even some human beings as objects, so that we don't get to see that and experience, or even have the time in many cases to spend time in nature. So we talk about how important that is. And then we talk about sacredness of prayer, and how it's important to have a vision of one's own purpose, to take time out for that, to go deep into the silence, to maybe go on a fast, to maybe, take time for oneself to figure out, well, who am I here? I don't belong to my parents. I'm my own person. I came here through them, but this is my road. And then to have the bravery to go through that road. And we have short stories we tell that show how that happens. And then we go into like looking at generosity from a different place. Generosity, that means that there's a shared equity between the giver and receiver, that the things that we have in excess, that we could maybe create a different currency here. Whereas, people are building the wealth within their own community, rather than to use it's how the money is used in the dominant culture to deny access, to control who gets it, and, you know, and to therefore come up with something else based on true trade and generosity, building community where everyone has what they need, and that we barter with each other for it, and that we build structures for that. And part of that, you know, it looks like maybe liberating land from ownership or land back, but even more profound would be liberating land from ownership. Like when you look at the vision, can anyone now vision a land that's not owned? That's how it was before the colonists came, not too long ago. Can you imagine if the land were not owned, what would that do for everything else in our life, housing, everything? So we talk about generosity from that deep place, and then we talk about gratitude. Gratitude for all of our experiences, even the hard ones, the struggles. We talk a lot about how important it is for survivors to tell their stories. And then we talk a lot about not only is it important, it's critical for healing, and that when we heal ourselves, we heal those who went before us and those who come after us. And we do this in such a deep way. There's a lot of sharing in such a deep way that, you know, people are sharing their pain in a way with each other that maybe they don't necessarily feel comfortable doing in other places. But when you come down to healing harm, it's important for those who harm to get to that place where they can go into their pain and figure out, when was it that they first began to think that a way to be safe was to create a barrier of harm around themselves, harm others so they're too afraid to come in, and the cost to love and not being loved that goes with that, and then the yearning to be loved is bigger than this wall of anger and hate. It's just like watching people be able to transform that. We've had some people involved with us for years, and we've watched their path go from having been incarcerated to a place of being a real healing force in the community. And we welcome more and more of their leaders and seeing them as leaders. So this curriculum took so long. It took 2.5 years to actually create, and then it kept shifting because we found out that the order that we teach it in was exactly how I put it forward to share with you. Those were the step-by-step building blocks. Because when you work with survivors and providers of people, and providers who are working with survivors, you can't go to the empathy for people who harmed right away. There needs to be a build-up to that. And so we go through all the other, you know, it's at the halfway point that we can talk about empathy for those who harm, especially for the provider community of people working directly with people who've been harmed. And so I just think that all of these things have led us to developing the Transforming the Culture of Power conference, to bring in medicine people from all these indigenous tribes. The Transforming the Color of Power, the Culture of Power that we do every year now. It's the 4th annual one this year, May 9th, 10th, 11th. And the theme this year is walking in balance with our relations, building the power of healthy community. Because at this time, it's an opportune time for people to unite, because the forces of oppression have hit us on every single level. It's hit seniors, it's hit, you know, immigrant community, it's hit Black community, it's hit white communities too now, and it's hit everybody in such a profound way through education, Social Security, healthcare. It's hit us in so many ways that maybe there are shock and awe that they said they would visit upon us, hit us in so many places they didn't count on the resiliency of people to resist and unite. So now there's a real uniting of all different things. You know, we can light the 8th fire now. The 8th fire brings us all together, all nations together, all ethnicities, all gendered expression, all, all identities that we have, that we're united and strong. We can change things around. We can build the community that we want to have. And we can do this through recognizing that one united people is stronger than anyone singly alone. And so this is where we are right now. And the Transforming the Culture of Power has been addressing this right along. And we bring in the medicine people, because in this area in New England, the Medewan lodges are the lodges that talked about the prophecy of what was going to befall us. The prophecy, the 7 fires, was predicted and talked about for a long time. People knew when the light-skinned people were coming. And so I'll just share briefly what all of that is. The 7 fire, in the first fire, the prophets came and told a happy group of people who were experiencing harmony, who were feeling really good about everything, and came and told the people, you're going to need to move. You're going to need to migrate from where you are, because if you don't migrate, your communities are going to be destroyed. And here were these prophets talking about something that people were like, what? We're doing good here. Why should we move? So some never moved, but some did. And they were following a path, and there were dreams all involved, and there were like a particular shell that was to guide the people, a mega shell they call it. But anyway, they were to follow a path of stepping stones, and they were to end up at the place where food grows on the water. So in the second fire, when people were going, the prophet came and said, you're going to need to, let me see, I'm going to probably forget all these fires, but anyway, maybe I should just because what happened is people forgot, they start out and then they forget why they're going. And then in the second fire, there's another prophecy. And then a young, I believe in this case, it's a young girl who has the dream and knows where to go next. And then in the third fire, they're moving down again, and they're identifying all the things that are going to happen. And in the fourth fire, this is where the light-skinned people, they were told, there were 2 prophets came to say, there will be light-skinned people coming, and they will come in 2 different ways. One will be speaking brotherhood and uniting, and other will be talking destruction, and you won't necessarily know the difference. So in the 5th fire, when the colonists came here and the Puritans, and you see that people are beginning to adopt the praying Indian thing, and people are beginning to lose belief in their own religious and spiritual underpinning, and they're beginning to adopt everything that's being told to them by the people who came in, the light-skinned settlers. And then in the 6th fire, everybody is brought into devastation, genocide. People are put into the residential boarding schools. In the 7th fire, people wake up. And they wake up and realize, oh my God, we need to go back to our elder teachings. We need to go back, because this is the way of destruction that was told to us. So in the 8th fire, people actually build that one nation where we all come into one. And what's interesting about this prophecy is William Commander, who was a chief medicine person at Kitchigan Duby in Ontario at the reservation there, he predicted he had these wampum belts, 7 of them, and we were privileged to be able to touch them and be present when they were teachings about them. But he said in 2025 that when Canada becomes the 51st state, and you see how prophecy works, that was an exact pinpoint date, but it's not going to come to pass that this will happen, but he predicted accurately that it would become an issue. Prophecies are meant not to happen that way, when they're negative. They're a warning. So we need to light the state fire now, where we all become united in one nation, and we drop all our hatred and we drop all our prejudices. Those who've been harmed, those who have done the harm, we need to go forward and create a world where there is no more racism, where there is no more gender-based violence, where there is no more sexualized violence, into a place of healing and, you know, back to the way they were living before this all happened. Only now, you know, it really goes to Wisconsin, and there's a path. And many people know about it, and a lot of the people that come to the Transforming the Culture of Power, several of the elder teachers are members of the lodge, the medicine lodges. And they bring their teachings here. And they're very loving and compassionate. They're seers. They're very special. And they come every year. Some of them we have come every year. Others we, you know, bring other people in that are still doing that work from different perspective. But nonetheless, they're part of the 8 Fire building. So this year is going to be really exciting because we got people coming in the field. You know, Kimber Nicoletti works with migrant people and indigenous people. And we're a natural pairing. Some, you know, and she knew that when she was doing her work at the Multicultural Efforts to End Sexual Assault, which now, like a lot of programs, are being, you know, a lot of funding is going to be disappearing from the work, especially around gender-based violence and around Two Spirits and that. So I just think that every year we did these conferences, we have ceremony. That is really important. Pipe ceremony, where people see, get away from the white world of agendas, get away from the white world of looking at things as not connected to sacred space. Like where we hold the conference is at a place where a big genocide occurred early on, you know, and in the Pumtuk were basically pretty much completely wiped out. Yet the spirits there are the descendants from both sides, from those who were harmed and those who did the harm. But the ones on that land are ones that look to the healing. They look to bringing a new world in. They are about building the 8th fire. And Mary Ellen Baker, who's an amazing grandmother who does a lot of healing ceremonies, like the wiping of the tears, which she will be bringing to our place. She said that this place at Woman Hill for her felt like home. And she said that lots of people have walked in prayer in that space. So we're inviting you to come to this space for healing for yourself, to open to a whole new way of teaching. We start out with pipe ceremony in the morning, and that will evolve into greeting of the day, a big, different kind of welcoming in, and then we will start with the teachings. And interwoven will be sharing of food in a different way. Interwoven will be ceremonies and circles. And these ceremonies, like the medicine wheel, this will be, I think, the 3rd time that Joseph Many Horses will bring the medicine wheel, which he got from a dream. And it's sad to say, in previous things, when he would put out his PowerPoint, he would describe all of the stones and where they were placed, all that came to him in a dream. And we were watching people with light skin want to cement that grid so they could maybe make it themselves or do it in there. You know, this is the worst of appropriation. So we ask that when you participate this year, we're not going to have that piece of, we will have the ceremony. The ceremony is a particular person's dream to share with you for your healing. And in it are all the special stones there, and they work on you. Some people here will be able to share what happened with their stones, but people pick what they need, like a trust stone, or they may pick a different stone that had to do with courage, or each one of the stones has a profound meaning, and it's held in a different house too, and where all of it's important. So You know, we talked with Joseph Many Horses about, you know, that concern. He said he always leaves out a big piece because of that. He's aware that people are not looking at the dream or the behind it or the respect for it. They want to recreate it without the dream, without the understanding. I mean, that to me is where a lot of, to me, that's appropriation. When you take something of someone, you copy it for yourself without a real understanding of what it means and how it operates, and an acute disrespect for the one who's bringing it. The wiping of the tears is, you know, a profound healing experience that's different for every single person, because all of us are so different in what we need. If you ask people how they felt after experiencing the wiping of the tears, they all have a different story to tell. But what's important is that your whole community is there with you. You get to go forward in a new way in life with new shirt, new clothes. You have your whole, you know, you just have all of this pain wiped away in a profound way, and your whole community is dancing and celebrating you and welcome you in as your new self. So like these are the kinds of like profound experience we want to share with you. So I'm going to pass to you, Mir, if you have any thoughts to share about that, because we're coming close to the end of our first podcast here.
Okay. I wanted to say that if people want more information about anything we've talked about today, whether it be the walking and balance training or the conference or the whatever, that they can go to visioningbear.org and get information there. And right on the very first page, it has a place you can click on to find out more about the conference and to register for it. And it's also kind of based on what you can afford to pay. You don't, you know. So if you think that, you know, you can't afford it, yes, you can. So I just want to let you know that, and it's May 9th, 10th, and 11th. And it didn't occur to us about Mother's Day is on that Sunday, and I think that might interfere with some people, but you don't have to come to every day too. You could just come for, you know, for Friday and Saturday if Mother's Day is out of the question for you, or you can bring your mother. You know, that's the other option. So anyway, and I think that's all I have to say at this point, and I pass to Rhiannon.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I am a mother, and I am actually really excited to be there on Mother's Day, connecting with Mother Earth and tending to myself. I really I can't think of another place that I have found ever that offers such a solution oriented and like comprehensive looking at means to address all that needs healing right now, both like personally and collectively. I can't think of a place that I'd rather be. In my every conference I've been to, it's been such a profound and life-changing experience. Um, and so it feels like none of that will hold much of a candle compared to the one we have coming up and everything that's being packed into those 3 days. So I'm really excited to be there, and I'm excited to see some familiar faces and hopefully get to meet a bunch of new folks as well. Um, and so honored to be here today as well. I'm excited to have this first podcast in the books. Uh, yeah, so with that, I'll pass on to Atoya.
Received, Jan, and thank you. I just want to thank you, Elder Strong Oak, for explaining like the meaning behind those ceremonies and letting people know like why we do them and what they're for, and helping them understand how they will be a part of that. I just I'm looking forward to after the conference hearing like how powerful it was. There are going to be so many ceremonies that people can take part in, and there are going to be so many powerful speakers. If you have not done so, go online. As Mary said, go to the Visioning Bear website. There's also a Facebook page for us as well. Go and look at the itinerary, go and look at what's coming up on that weekend. There's so much going on, and the speakers that will be there will be so powerful. Especially, we have several like powerful women who will be speaking at this conference, and then there will also be other circles, talking circles. So I can't think of a better way. Actually, I thought about what you said, Mary. I can't think of a better way to spend Mother's Day. Like, if I were able to take my mother to this imagine bonding in a
Mhm.
space like this on
Mhm.
Mother's Day. That would be so amazing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I encourage people to go. And I just look forward to hearing the impact of the conference. And I know it will be powerful because it is every year. So I'll pass back to you, Elder Strong, on my relations.
Yeah, in closing remarks, I just wanted to really thank Kourou Pich. She will
Mhm.
be, one of the presenters at
Mhm.
the Transforming the Culture of Power, Walking in Balance gathering that we're having. And also, what we wanted to say about it, there were some last thoughts I wanted to just share about the whole thing is how organic things can be when they're spirit driven. Last year at the conference, we had All Souls Church cater our event, and then we found out that there were all the people that were preparing the food were all people in reentry working with All Souls Church and the Culinary Arts Institute. They had, and we're still working with them again, and they're coming to cater our event again. And then we also had to deal with getting rid of all the trash in a good way. And then we found out about Compost Cooperative, which again is people, reinventing their lives, many people coming, through recovery from substance use disorders and from the reentry from the jails. And again, they came up with this incredible compost thing, their compost cooperative. So they will be handling that. And that resulted in us getting a grant with Reliance for working with people in reentry so that they would, prevent first or repeat sexual violences in the community. And so you see how when things are more spirit driven, doors open, you just go through and you say yes.
Mhm.
And really, these conferences have been like that. Who gets attracted to come? Tinker Schumann will be coming. This woman is from Lac du Flambeau Reservation, so beloved in her community. She does a lot of naming ceremonies. She's an artist and a poet. So she's going to have people connect with their spirit and then be able to translate that into paintings that people will bring home. And also there's, Margaret de la Fuente, who's a moon dancer and a healer, and she's going to be bringing a lot of wisdom around her work as well. And, she's going to be sharing, again, there'll be a lot of interactive processes with what's going on with her. And also, Ellen is bringing, she has these 5 cards that were designed from Spirit, and they were from over 50 years ago. And they represent a teaching from an elder from 50 years ago. And they are inspiring. And on the same day, people will experience what Mary Ellen has to say. And then the next day, they will be able to maybe have, in the afternoon, they'll be percolating with what she said. And then that will go into being able to tap into one's own ancestors, right? And come up with one's own card, if you will, or painting. So it's like it all like kind of spiritually evolved. That's what I want to say. Who's coming? And we feel that way about who's coming to the conference too. If you feel, hopefully you feel called to come, because all these elders, they use the word called to come. And, you know, we've been blessed to bring people who are internationally known in the work that they do, to be able to come and share with us and, you know, address what we need at this time. And they're people who are part of the Eight Fire, you know, configuration. They're not people who turn down people who aren't native from learning. At the same time, they wish for respect for indigenous leadership. There's a difference. So we just think that you're going to be really mystified if you come to this transforming the culture of power, and that, you know, if you feel called to go on with us further, there'll be avenues for that. And there's a surprise we're going to be unleashing there about some big event that we're going to be organizing for healing, but we don't want to spring it just yet. Just to be intrigued that it involves traveling the trail of migration. So I think with closing, we just are really grateful for all of us here. You know, we're going to be a team that comes onto the podcast. You'll get to know each of us, and each of us will be. This time was my turn to kind of to do the, you know, take more leadership in it. Now we be sharing among the group that you see here. We'll be taking leadership in different subsequent podcasts. So if you feel like you want to be part of our podcast, contact us at connect at visioningbear.org and send us thoughts about, you know, what you might want to talk about, and we'll maybe talk to you about that and maybe bring it forward, because we may not know what gifts that you have. So that, with all that, I would just like to say, till our eyes meet again and our ears meet again, may we all be in peace and harmony, and may we all be able to have the courage to move and do the things we need to do for each other. So until then, and hopefully we'll see many of you in May. All our relations